Hello, and welcome to the Addicts Anonymous podcast. I'm your host, Jamar. Today is episode 104, and we're going to be interviewing Bryan H. How are you doing this morning, Bryan?
I'm doing great, Jim.
It's good to hear. We were just chatting a little bit. I'm happy to have you on today. So, like I told you, let's dive in and talk about your childhood. How was it growing up?
Growing up for me, I think is a pretty boring story. I think relative to most people who've suffered with addiction anyway. I had a pretty vanilla childhood. I grew up in Pennsylvania, in central Pennsylvania near Harrisburg. There wasn't addiction in my family. My parents drank, but I really don't remember my mother drinking much at all. My dad would drink. His brothers would come over. They'd sit out on the patio and have some beers. Nothing at all out of the ordinary. There wasn't abuse of any kind in my childhood. There wasn't trauma. I liked school. I was a good student. I got into sports. I played basketball, baseball, golf eventually, pretty much anything that involved a ball or whatever kind of sporting equipment I was happy to get into. We took our, financially, we were just kind of a middle-class family. We took our trips to summer and vacations to the Jersey Shore every year. I don't remember ever, hurting for money, but at the same time, we didn't have luxurious things or anything. It was just a very kind of standard white picket fence, normal childhood.
Where are you located right now?
I'm in Boise, Idaho.
Okay, because I'm about 30 minutes from the Jersey Shore, 40 minutes.
Okay, yeah.
I live in New Jersey.
We went to Ocean City pretty much every summer in my childhood. Stayed at a little place called the Hope Guest House in
Hope Guest House.
Jersey. Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, I was actually talking with someone because now I just said it's episode 104. So I've done over 100 interviews, and you're on the rare side of the spectrum. It's very rare for us addicts to say, oh yeah, childhood was good. Mom and dad had a job and they did this, they did that, we went on vacation. Very rare.
Yeah, absolutely. I had an experience, an interesting, I think, experience. So I've been to rehab, I've been to residential treatment multiple times. And I had one experience where we were in a group session, and the person leading the session asked us to think about when was the first time that you knew you were different as a kid? And people started sharing things, and, a lot of serious vulnerability about, well, I knew I was different because, my mom was always drunk and I had to run the household. And I know that other kids didn't have households that were like that. And someone else would talk about, their experience of physical or verbal or even sexual abuse. And I'm sitting there going, God, the reason that I knew I was different was because I was smarter than the other kids. I could for them. And and I remember sitting there going, I can't say that. These people are sharing all these really difficult experiences. And my experience of being different was exactly the opposite. It was a positive experience, but I actually chose to say it. And it was really sort of liberating, because someone else said, wow, I was sitting there thinking the same thing. I didn't have that difficult childhood. I had a similar experience where the way that I knew I was different was that I kind of, things were easier for me. So, yeah.
You have brothers and sisters?
I have an older sister, 6 years older.
Me too. My sister's 6, or wait, she just told me I was wrong. I think she's 7 years older than me. I've been saying my whole life she's 6 years older than me. She's like, no, I'm 7. So she's 7 years older than me.
Yeah, my sister's birthday is actually the day after my birthday. So I like to say that I was her 6th birthday present.
There you go.
I don't think she appreciated that though.
No, wasn't a good present for her.
No.
Yelling and screaming.
Right.
So when was the first time you were ever exposed to, I guess, I want to say alcohol and drugs? I know you said your mom and dad drank growing up. Did they ever get drunk?
I can't remember a time where I thought one of them was drunk. I honestly can't even, I'm sure that my mom drank, but I can't picture it actually as a kid. I can picture it as an adult. And my dad, like I said, what I picture of him drinking is Friday night and one or both of his brothers would come over and they'd sit out on the patio and drink beer in the evening. But I don't remember a time where I ever thought, oh wow, he's he's had too many beers. He's someone different now. He's acting differently. That wasn't an experience I had at all in my childhood.
What was your social life like?
Um, my social life, I mean, it was, we lived in a small town. A lot of my social life would have been like going to get on my bike and ride over to my buddy's house and we'll play some basketball or we'll ride bikes together or we'll go to the pool or that kind of thing. I think a lot of my social life definitely revolved around sports. I played Little League baseball was a huge thing. And then, I played Little League from like, I don't know, from age 8 on up through, played high school baseball and everything. So that, and I got very into basketball as well. So a lot of my social life definitely revolved around sports. Friends would come over and play football in the backyard, or we'd go shoot hoops or whatever, that sort of thing. I didn't have a social life at all as a kid that involved alcohol. I didn't drink until, well, I think I had a beer or two when I was like a junior or senior in high school, but I didn't really drink, like get drunk, until after graduation. College was really where I figured out how to drink.
When was the first time you ever took anything? Was it like, did you smoke pot younger, or did you just, everything happen in college?
I think the first time I could say for sure I had a beer, my one of my really good friends and I drove to Philadelphia to go to a U2 concert with my sister, and we had a beer or two before the concert. And I remember doing it, but I don't remember thinking, oh, I like this, or it's cool, or I want to do more of this. It was just kind of like, oh, everybody's in the parking lot drinking and my sister's going to let me have a beer. So I'm going to have a beer or two or whatever it was. That was the first experience. The first time I really got drunk was beach week. After graduation, we went, I guess, to Ocean City, Maryland. And, that's the goal. That's the purpose of beach week after you graduate from high school, is to go get drunk for several days. And I certainly did that. And it was a total mix of very good and very bad experience. I enjoyed the experience and the feeling of getting drunk, but I also got super, super sick and threw up like crazy and felt horrible, but, went and did it all again the next day too, because that's what you were supposed to do.
So you, what was college like? You went to college?
I went to college. I went to Virginia Tech. And I think I 100% expected to drink at college. That was I think that was the script or the narrative that I heard in my family, was that people go to college, and at college they drink. My dad went to Penn State and was in a fraternity, and my sister went to Penn State as well. And, I certainly heard about drinking escapades through both of them and probably through other people in my family. And, I think that's just that's the stereotypical college experience, is you go off and you get a little wild and you party, and that's part of it. So yeah, right away, when I got to college, I think like even before classes started, like we were there for orientation week or whatever. My couple buddies on the dorm hall were like, yeah, we've got some friends with an apartment. They're having a party tonight. Let's go. Yeah, absolutely. So sort of similar to that beach week experience. I remember going, drinking beer and playing drinking games. And I remember really like loving the feeling, like, wow, this is a great feeling. I feel like I've always been a somewhat introverted person, but I think the drinking, I felt like, oh, wow, I can be a little more open, the whole, lowers inhibitions. Right. And I remember thinking, oh, wow, like there's college girls here. And I think some of them might even be interested in me. Like, that's really cool. So
You read the big book?
I have read it. I have read it. Yeah.
You remember the part where he's talking about the first drink that made him realize, he said, I have arrived. He felt like he had arrived.
I
It
don't
made him more,
know that
it made
part,
him more
but
sociable, made him easier to talk to people and things like that. So it sounds like had the same type of experience.
yeah, very much so. Very
This
much.
made things easier.
Yeah. It made me feel comfortable, made me feel like I belonged. And then, but just like beach week, I had too much. I ended up throwing up in this apartment and not remembering really what happened, and taking a walk of shame the next day and wondering, God, are these guys who have this apartment, are they going to want to beat the crap out of me because I threw up on their furniture or whatever? But walked over there with a buddy and some cleaning supplies. And, it's really interesting. I feel like the lesson I learned from that in my head was not like, oh, wow, drinking is bad, because look at the ramifications. The takeaway I had was like, drinking is really fun. I just need to get better at it. Like, I need to figure out how to be more skillful with this. And that's definitely how I approached the rest of college. I honed my skills all the time.
What did you just start drinking more and more?
Um, I wouldn't say necessary. I mean, yes and no. As an undergraduate, it was very much it was just a weekend thing. It was just a nighttime thing. I probably never drank during the day unless it was like a tailgate for a football game. And it was a couple nights a week on the weekend. Like I said, it was much later in life that it became more non-traditional or non-stereotypical and much more problematic. But the evolution was so slow. It's really, I like to use the word insidious. Like, it just changes so gradually and slowly over time. You don't even notice it until certain really meaningful and impactful events happen.
So you honed your skills over the years.
I did, that's for sure.
So
Really good.
A lot of college drinking. I remember I didn't go to college, but this is right around the time most of my friends were in college. I was drinking a lot, and my friend, he had a 2-story beer bomb. You know, the funnel thing? So
Yeah.
He had one that the hose dropped down from the second window. And it was a huge funnel. So you filled it up with like 5 beers, and someone went downstairs and you hit the, what do you call it? Like the hatch thing, and down it went.
Yeah.
Nobody ever did it. It just went all over you went, oh, I mean, you tried your hardest, but it was a mess.
I'm pretty sure I encountered one of those in that beach week experience where like people were up on a balcony and dropping, like you said, dropping the hose down to someone on the street.
Yep. Yeah. So at what point did you realize you were starting to develop an issue? Was there anything that kind of stands out to you?
Well, I think it's a different answer. There are things that I can look back on now and realize, oh yeah, that's sort of when a problem was happening. The first time I realized it, like in real time, was this would have been about 5 years ago. My drinking had evolved to the point where it really was an everyday thing, and it was something that I very often hid from people. Hid my drinking or lied about how much I had been drinking, that sort of thing. But I had a day, I think it would have been 5 years ago, where, I woke up hungover and, so a little hair of the dog in the morning to shake the cobwebs out. And I think I took some bourbon or something to work with me. And I'm not a coffee drinker. I'm a Coke Zero drinker. Went to work and bought some Coke Zero out of the vending machine and went to the bathroom and doctored it. And so I'm drinking at the morning or at work in the morning. And, as soon as I knew a place nearby was open for lunch, I left work and went and grabbed some lunch and had I'm sure I had a couple beers with lunch, but that particular day I just had this like very, very lost feeling, like what the hell are you doing kind of feeling. And I can remember I was actually working at Virginia Tech, and I remember just going and kind of wandering around campus and just just not really knowing what to do. Like I wasn't busy at work. I didn't really have to be there. No one was going to notice if I was gone. So I'd kind of wander around a little while, and then I'd go back to whatever bar and I'd have a beer and I'd wander around a little more. And I had a volleyball game in like the next town over that evening. So I drove over to the other town, and of course I went to another bar before volleyball, and I probably had a couple more beers there, and went to a volleyball game and played. And I wasn't like stumbling drunk or anything, but I certainly didn't play the way I would have been able to play. And so it didn't go well athletically. I remember sitting on the bleachers after the game, and one of my best buddies was sitting there with me, and he just looked at me and he was like, "Are you okay, man?" I was like, yeah, I'm fine. What are you talking about? He was like, "No, like, are you okay?" It's like, "Yeah, I'm cool. Nothing's wrong." And that sort of passed. And then I left, and like, as soon as I leave, like my first thought is I should probably drink some more, right? So I stop at a convenience store, 5 minutes from where we played volleyball, and somehow sitting there, like I decided, what the hell are you doing? Like, you drank all day and now you're going to drink again while you're driving home. What's going on? So somehow I managed to not buy that beer and drink more. And I decided when I got home, like I was going to admit it to my wife. So I got home and I was like, "Look, here's how my day went." And I related to her what I just related to you. And I was just like, I don't know what the hell to do about it. I don't know what to do about this, but something's got to change. And that led to the first time that I went to rehab, went to residential treatment. So that
How
was.
old were you at this point?
What's that?
How old were you at this point?
So that was 5 years ago. I would have been like 45, 46.
Oh, so you had a long career.
Oh yeah. I
Tell us
was
a little bit
decades.
before you go into rehab. What was it? Did you have any escapades or anything that happened throughout those 20 years that were building up to it, you going to rehab? Like what kind of things would you do?
I mean, I drove drunk way more than I'd like to admit. I did get a DUI in my first one. I've had multiple. The first one I got in 2013, I think. But that was 4 years before I really admitted I had a problem. And that DUI was kind of one that I could write off as, oh, boys will be boys. I had been out playing poker with my buddies, had too much, 2 in the morning driving home. I got caught. So it wasn't the kind of thing that forced me to admit I had a problem. It was just, yeah, sometimes you go out and you drink too much and you make a bad decision to drive and you get caught. It wasn't until that experience years, and I certainly had, I had multiple experiences of drinking too much and blacking out, and my wife being mad at whatever I did while I was drunk and that sort of thing. But it really wasn't until that experience about 5 years ago that I woke up and said, "Holy crap, you've really got a problem, dude."
What kind of things would you do to upset your wife?
It mostly would have been things like very passive things. Like I was never an angry drunk. I never I'm not a bar fight kind of guy or anything like that. I wouldn't get argumentative. It would be more like, maybe we were out somewhere or on vacation and like I might have passed out in public because I had so much to drink. That kind of sort of social embarrassment is.
What kind of places would you pass out?
In a restaurant. I mean,
oh wow, yeah, that's a big deal.
I was the brand of drunk that even my wife, who obviously knew me better than anyone in the world, she often had no clue how drunk I was, how much I had to drink. And so I could appear, she obviously knew I was drinking, but I could appear fairly sober and literally like pass out at a dinner table or at a bar after dinner, that kind of thing.
And do you have children?
I have one daughter. I have a 21-year-old daughter, just graduated from college.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Actually, I was just there. She went to Elon University in North Carolina. I was just there and to celebrate that. It was fantastic.
Were you doing this dumb stuff in front of her?
Yeah, I absolutely was. I don't think there was, well, I mean, so much of my drunken life involved, blacking out late at night. I can't say for sure what I might have done in front of her, but there was no particular notable experience with her. She knew that I drank a lot, and she certainly saw me drunk many, many times. But no super noteworthy experiences with her, fortunately.
So you're drinking for 20 years. You finally realize you have an issue. What do you do about it?
So I went to rehab. I knew something had to change. Something had to change big time. Like it wasn't a minor tweak to my life. This was clear. I was drinking all day, every day, basically. So for some reason, I got it in my mind, like if I'm going to rehab, like I'm going far away. I was living in Virginia at the time, and I decided, well, I'm just going to go out west because like I want to be totally disconnected and unplugged from this life that's not working for me for a while. So we found this.
Real quick before we get there, let me ask you one question. What were you doing for a living that you were able to get drunk all day?
So I was the business information technology manager in the provost's office at Virginia Tech. And it was a newly created, well, it was a newly created position. And I just wasn't that busy, partly because it was a new position and we were kind of trying to figure out really what I was supposed to be doing. And I partly wasn't busy because like I'm smart and I'm efficient, and even drinking, I could get things done. So, and it was a very independent position. I wasn't generally wasn't working in a team of people. It was a position where I was given a lot of latitude to get things done independently when and how I wanted to get them done. So it was very easy for me to drink at work or slip away and have a few beers with lunch or have a few beers in the afternoon or leave early to get drunk before my wife would get home, that sort of thing.
So you decided to get your shit together, and where we left off was you were going out west, you decided, right? Yeah.
So we decided I needed to try rehab to turn things around. We found this place called Recovery Ways in Salt Lake City. So in would have been February of 2017, I think, I headed out to Salt Lake City to try to square things away. That was the first time I remember I got into Salt Lake City like the middle of the night, like 1 or 2 a.m. or something. And, of course, I drank on my way there. So I got there not sober. And I remember getting to the place and they showed me to my room, and, I sleep or pass out or whatever you want to call it. But I knew there was a meeting at 8 a.m. or whatever that next day, and I got myself up and I showed up for it, and the very first thing that was going on was people going around the room saying, I'm Jim, I'm an alcoholic kind of thing. And I was like, oh shit, am I going to have to say that? Like, it came around to me and I was like, I guess I go for it. I said, yeah, I'm Bryan and I'm an alcoholic. And that was,
Yeah, I don't know why it's so hard. For
yeah,
me, it was hard. I because it was admitting I didn't have my life together, and I thought I
yeah.
did. I was still fighting it. Like, no, I got my shit together. I don't know what everyone's talking about.
Yeah, even though I had gotten to the point where I was willing to fly across the country and pay thousands of dollars to go to a rehab. Yeah, you're right that there's something about saying that out loud in front of people that is really hard. I think for me anyway, it was a mix of like, wow, can I really, I've been a super successful and high achieving person my whole life. Can I really admit that there's something that I have like no control over or limited control over? Plus, I think there's such a stigma around that word alcoholic. I think, it's easy to picture that person as alcoholic goes with words like degenerate, right? And drunk and very negative sounding words. Like, can I really myself is that where I am? So yeah, I said it that morning, but I don't know that I believed it. I was just saying it because I'm the kind of person who wants to fit in with the crowd, right? That's kind of why I drank. I wanted to fit in with the crowd. So if everyone here is saying I'm an alcoholic or I'm an addict, like I'm going to say that too.
So, what did it feel like? So, do you think it was a humbling experience also?
Yeah, it absolutely was. Saying that specifically and rehab in general. Although I think humbling was part of it. I think the best part of that rehab experience for me was figuring out that, hey, that there are other people who I like and who are successful and who seem to be really good people, really cool people. They're alcoholics too. Like, this is not the negative stigma that's associated with it. Like, it's not really true. These are people who are struggling in particular ways. And what was super eye-opening for me was, this was not a rehab just for people with issues with alcohol. It was any sort of addiction. And there were several heroin addicts there who I met. And I just, like, to me, like, drinking was one thing, right? Drinking's legal and it's socially acceptable and even encouraged and glorified. But like, to me, something like heroin, like, that was a totally different ball game. But here I met these people who had been shooting that stuff in their veins. And I was like, oh my God, these are cool and smart and respectable people that I really, really like. Like, wow, this really can happen to
Anybody. When I got to rehab, these people were some of the most intelligent people I'd spoken to in a while. Like, we had very deep, in-depth conversations about anything from addiction to philosophy. You know what I mean? There were so many different people from different backgrounds with different levels of education, and it showed you affect anyone. I remember a professional baseball player was with us. I didn't know. I don't follow sports, but someone came up to me like, that's one of the blah blah blah. I'm not going to say, but he said he plays professional baseball. And I remember the first night he came in, he was covered in piss. He peed himself. He was hammered. He was messed up on whatever else he was taking.
Yeah.
And just to see yourself, like, this guy's technically living the dream, because most people who want to be a pro baseball player, that's their dream.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
He got there. He's playing his dream, and it still wasn't enough to fill that void that we call addiction. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I found that to be, I said to myself after that, I'm like, it could happen to anybody. I don't know why that hit me, but it did. Just because that guy was literally, quote unquote, living his dream.
Yep. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's it is something that doesn't discriminate at all. It doesn't matter how educated you are, how wealthy you are, what your race is, what your sexuality is. It can grab anyone and everyone.
Yeah. So how was your rehab experience overall?
That experience was good. I think in retrospect, while I knew that I had a problem and things had to change, I never bought into quitting drinking. I think I went through the experience with a mindset of like, okay, I'm a smart guy. If I just learn about this and if I just can better understand why I'm doing the things I'm doing, like I can learn my way out of it, right? I can get smart about it, and I can come out of this as someone who will be able to be a normal drinker, you know, who can manage and moderate it. And so I didn't drink for a while. I don't remember the details after that experience. I was in rehab for about 30 days, I think. And I didn't drink for a while, but I sort of always had it in the back of my head, like I will go back. Like I never said it out loud probably until I think my wife and I were on a vacation, and we were gonna be going out to dinner with some people, and I knew like that was going to be uncomfortable for me. I knew everyone else was going to be drinking beer, and it was going to be uncomfortable for me. So I had a talk with her. I was like, look, I'm probably going to order a beer. If that's not going to freak you out. And she was cool with it. And yeah, so I had probably a couple beers with dinner that night, and that was all I had. And I did really manage and moderate my drinking for a while, but as I'm sure you've heard in many people's stories, that worked until it didn't, right? Like eventually I slid right back into the old habits and got back into it's every day and maybe all day kind of thing.
So did you have to go back to rehab?
I did. So I got my second DUI in, let's see, it would have been 2019. So a couple years later, a couple years after that first rehab experience, I got another DUI, and obviously the consequences are greatly upped for the second one. And yeah, I decided, all right, I don't remember exactly when or why or how I decided to go back to rehab, but that happened. I think I got the DUI in maybe February of 2019, and it took a couple months to make the decision that, yeah, I'm going to try rehab again. Cause I think for a while I was like, shit, I've been there, done that. I tried rehab and clearly it doesn't work. Why would I go back again? But eventually, yeah, I think my drinking had spiraled out of control yet again, to a point where I was like, okay, I think I don't know any other answer but to go somewhere where I won't be able to drink. And I think I got to the point where I really did start to think like this is killing me. Like it's either going to kill me because I'm going to go out and drink and drive and have a terrible accident, or it's going to kill me slowly by, destroying my liver or my brain or whatever. So ended up in rehab would have been like late April of 2019.
How'd you do the second time around? Were you taking it more seriously?
Yeah, I took it very much more seriously. I did have that attitude that like, okay, this is actually killing me now. This is not just something that needs to be managed. This is something that's literally life-threatening. And it was interesting. I actually ended up going to 2 different treatment facilities. I was working with a therapist at the time, and this again was still in Virginia. She had recommended a place that it was local, literally only like a 20-30 minute drive away. And she kind of said, if someone in my family, someone I really cared about, were in this position, that's where I'd tell them to go. So I was like, all right, that's the best endorsement I can get, I guess. So I'll go there. And I went to this place and I hated it. It was super institutional. There were probably, I think there were about 55, 60 residents, clients there. The overwhelming majority of them were 25 years old or younger. At this point, I would have been like 47 or so, 48. So these were people half my age. Most of them had drug problems, not drinking issues, and addiction is addiction, but like there were not people I could relate to there, right? Like I'm a professional 48-year-old with a drinking problem who's married and has a kid, and like I don't relate to a 20-year-old who's got an issue with oxy or whatever. You know, we're just at such different places, and plus the very just the treatment center I had gone to before was much smaller, and there was a wing of younger people and a wing of older people, and we didn't really mix very much. It had a much less institutional feel. I knew like from day one, this place, like this is not going to work. So I actually, and it was a place that was super, super restricted as far as contacting the outside world. Every other day or something, we got 10 minutes of phone time or whatever. So the first time I could get on the phone, I remember calling my wife and I was just bawling. I was like, you've got to find me a different place. Like, this is not for me. This is not going to work. And, I didn't get to talk to her for several more days, and I didn't really know how she had taken our short conversation. And I kind of had coached myself up to like, okay, this is where you are. Like, you don't think it's going to work. You don't like it, but hey, buck up and make the best of it. So I'd sort of coached myself up that way. And I got up one morning and went to our first meeting or whatever. And my therapist pulled me aside and said, hey, I need to talk to you. We went to her office and she was like, so I hear you're going to Silver Ridge. And I was like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. She was like, yeah, I've been talking to your wife and she's arranged this transfer to a different rehab in North Carolina. And I was like, okay. So yeah, unbeknownst to me, my wife had gotten in touch with one of her good friends who actually sort of works in the, not sort of, does work in the mental health and addiction industry, so to speak. And she went to her friend and said, hey, Bryan needs a better place. Help me find a better place. And she did. And I went to this place called Silver Ridge Recovery in Asheville, North Carolina. And it was 180 degrees from where I had been. And it was a fantastic and transformational experience for me. It was really fantastic.
So this is the one that worked for you. What was different about
it? Yes and no.
Okay. Let's get into that.
Yeah. It worked in a very big way. It truly was a transformational experience. I learned so much more there than I had in rehab before. And coming out of that, like I decided close to the end of my time there that I wanted to share my story, and I wanted to be of service to others who suffered. And so I decided I'd written some poetry while I was there. And I had shared some early on with a few of the people I was close with, and they really liked it, and they kind of encouraged me to share it with everyone. And I write these poems and I'd share them when people would be like, oh my God, I need a copy of that. I want that. And so by the end of rehab, I had written this whole series of poems, and I was like, I think I could turn these poems into a book if I like they kind of tell a story on their own, but I could make each one a chapter, and I could lead off with a poem, and then I could write a chapter about what that poem was about, and then so on. So I wrote and published this book.
Oh, awesome.
Called Unabashed.
Lift it up a little more.
Yeah. So
there you go. Yeah, totally plug that.
Yeah.
Where's it available?
It's on Amazon.
Amazon?
Yeah, I self-published it through Amazon, so it's available there.
We're going to talk about that after, because I've written a book and I'm just deciding on how to publish it. So definitely gonna pick your brain after this.
Awesome. But yeah, so I wrote that book, and I was so much more committed to recovery and sobriety, and I had at that point the best times of my life for a while. But again, at some point, it would have been Well, I sort of experimented. I drank a couple times. So I was in rehab like what, April, May, and I actually did IOP at the same facility for like 3 weeks afterwards. So I was residential for like 40 some days and then IOP for like 3 weeks. And for several months after that, I was sober and everything was great. But like by November, I was like, yeah, might be nice to try some beer tonight, on my own somewhere. And I did that. And I actually didn't like, it was a couple times I did that and it was just like a one night thing. It didn't turn into anything more. And I made it through the holidays and like I didn't drink at all through the holidays. But by the time, like really right as the book got published, I published the book in March of 2020, like right when the pandemic really started to hit. At that point, I started slipping back into it, started sneaking alcohol at every opportunity, and it spiraled right out of control again.
So how long did this next binge go on for?
It wasn't really a binge because I had to keep it a secret. Like no one knew I was drinking. I was just the nature of my life at the time was I was able to sneak it fairly often and hide it effectively. And then it blew up in kind of the most epic way possible. So I'm a car guy, and I had actually over this prior few years, I had built my own car. So I built this called Factory 5 Roadster. It's a replica of a 60s Shelby Cobra. And I had built this car and I decided like it would be epic if I drove this car across country, and planned out a route, and was going to drive the car the whole way to the West Coast from Virginia and the whole way back. And I made it to Minnesota and got a DUI.
Oh shit.
So third DUI, and that shit hit the fan hard and completely blew up my life again.
So what happened this time around?
So that pretty immediately and directly ended my marriage. I think at that point, my wife was like, that's the last straw. Like, I've stuck with you through all this. Like, she didn't know I had been drinking at all. And here I got drunk halfway across the country on this epic journey of mine. So she basically said, I don't think I can ever trust you again. And I certainly in my mind was like, yeah, even if you said that you trusted me, I don't think I'd believe you at this point. Like it can't work. So, and it was the third DUI, and it was unclear exactly what the ramifications of that were going to be because it happened out of state. Like, was it going to follow me back to Virginia? And if it did, how were the penalties going to work? Like, am I going to go to jail? Am I going to go to jail in Minnesota? Am I going to go to jail in Virginia? Am I going to lose my license? That sort of stuff, plus the divorce happening and all that unraveling. So that sent me into a binge because I just, I didn't know what to do other than try to drink it away, which obviously doesn't work, but I sure as hell tried real hard to drink it away for weeks.
So where are you at nowadays?
Nowadays, I'm great. Like I am, there's a whole lot of stories still in between there. Everyone likes to talk about their rock bottom, and I feel like I've had a few, but obviously I'm in Idaho now. So all that stuff happened when I was living in Virginia. I decided at some point to move out west and get a fresh start. I actually moved to Eugene, Oregon first. And then I ended up for a job moving here to Boise. But that whole experience was a blow up of a massive binge relapse that actually ended up with me in the hospital. I binged for like a month round the clock. I was only ever passed out or drinking. That was my life. And so much so that the job that I moved here for, I never even showed up for. But I did manage to quit one day. God knows how or why, but I managed to say, all right, this is the last one. 24 hours later, I went out first thing in the morning to walk my dog, and a couple blocks from here in a little park, apparently had a seizure and withdrawal. And fortunately, someone saw that happen and called 911, and I ended up with a long weekend in the hospital, detoxing and recovering from that experience. And that was the true bottom for me, and that turned things around. So that would have been early September of last year, of 2021. And recovery since then has been fantastic. It's the best period of my life since then.
That's great. So you're nice and clean nowadays. For how long?
I'm going to say long enough, because this is something I've been thinking about a lot lately. I mean, I haven't been perfect since September, which is 8 or 9 months or whatever now. I've really decided I'm going to stop keeping score. I think it's an unhealthy thing for me, because it's a game I can't win, right? The only way I win the sobriety, the forever sobriety game, is to die, right? Like if my outlook is I have to stay 100% clean and I'm going to count every day, I think it just sets me up for feeling like a failure if I ever slip. So I'm glad that people do proudly proclaim their 100 days, 2,000 days, 2 days, whatever it is. I don't mean to say no one should say that, but it doesn't work for me. And I see too many people who it leads to such shame and dejection when they can't live up to that perfect measuring stick that I've decided I'm just not going to play that game. The last year I've been as sober as I've been in 30 years, and it's fantastic, but I'm not gonna, how the days work out, that's my business.
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone's recovery is different. I mean, for me, I don't know how many days. I know I'm over 2 years. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm kind of like you, because I find some people, I know, I'm hoping I never do this, but they get to a long enough period where they go, like you said, oh, maybe just one. I've been sober X amount of days.
Right.
Versus I don't know how long I've been sober. I'm just going to keep it up and I'm not going to drink. I do plan on never drinking again. My goal is it's not to say, okay, now I'm under control and I can drink control, because it ain't going to work that way for me. That's just, but everyone's recovery is different.
Yeah. I guess the way that I look at it is I'm very much against absolutes like that. Like I don't think I've ever set a goal of I'm never going to drink again, because to me that's just, like I said, the only way I achieve that goal is to die. Right? Like, that's the only way I achieve never drinking again. And I don't mean to say to belittle that as a goal for you or for anyone. It's fine. Like you said, everyone's journey is different. But for me, like the focus is more like I just want to live a healthy life. Yeah. And as long as I'm living healthy, if a beer happens in there, it happens, and I'll move on. And I don't plan to drink. I don't want to drink. I know it's not good for me. I've seen in spades what it does to my life. So I'm not of the mindset that I want to get back to being, quote, a normal drinker or anything, but I'm also not gonna beat myself up if it happens. My goal is to live a happy, healthy life in recovery. And I've started a nonprofit that's alcoholism oriented, and I want to help other people avoid the experiences that I've had. And that's my path forward. I'm going to enjoy the journey without a specific goal like that, I guess.
Awesome. And I wish you the best as long as you're happy.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
As long as you're happy, because we only got this one life. So why not be as happy as possible? And like you said, if it's stuck, I mean, it's up to you what you feel about it, but if beer happens in there, at least you don't feel, like you said, absolutely depressed and dejected.
Yeah, and I think that the other element that's been interesting for me is like, and I'm involved in all sorts of sobriety oriented communities, and there's also a discussion, particularly I think for people who have had issues with alcohol. There's always discussion of, well, what about other substances? Like, is it okay for me to smoke pot or to take Delta 8 or whatever or something like that? And it like, is that, if I do that, am I sober? And that's another reason where I just don't want to play the scoreboard, because then you get wrapped up in, okay, what exactly
Yeah.
are the rules of sobriety? And it becomes a very like binary all or nothing game. Like you're either sober, abstinent, or you're not. And like,
Well, I mean, I consider when it comes to Delta 8, marijuana, stuff like that, there's nothing wrong with it as long as you're using it medicinally. Because I also am bipolar, so I take drugs given to me by a doctor.
right.
You know what I mean? And I have to take those. So if that's something part of your medicinal regimen, then so be it. You know what I mean? As long as you're
Yeah.
doing it the correct way, because you can abuse anything your doctor gives you.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
you
Yeah.
got
I
to.
mean, I actually had a hip replacement 2 months ago, and I was prescribed oxy something or other for that. I mean, fortunately, I was never in the kind of pain that I felt like I needed to take it. I never took any of it, but yeah, obviously there's tons of danger in taking something like that. But I was going to take it as prescribed if I felt I had to take it. And I think there are some people out there who would say, oh no, you can't do that if you're in recovery. You can't take any chemical substance that would alter you mentally. And well, no, I think there is a responsible way to do that that's healthy and okay. Even though
Yeah, I just say to those people, talk to my doctor. You know what I mean? Like the doctor, he's the one who went to school for 10 years. He's the one making those type of decisions when it comes to my overall health, mentally and physically. So I'm going to leave that up to my doctor, not to some old timer in AA.
Yeah.
But yeah, did you have anything else you want to talk about? I think this is a great place to wrap up.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the other thing I'll plug apart from my book is I think I mentioned that I've started this nonprofit. It's called Alcohol Isnt. So take alcoholism and change the end of it from ism to isn't. So I've started that, and it's the primary goal there is to really would like to help people avoid a lot of the suffering that I've experienced. So, in my journey through all these, through the DUIs and through the various therapists that I've worked with and through the residential treatment facilities that I've gone to, like I've been so fortunate that every step there along the way, finances were not really a concern for me. Like I could say, yeah, I'm going to go to rehab for 30, 40 days or whatever, and I can afford it. And I can afford to be not working during that time. And it was never like a hard, oh God, can we actually do that financially? And obviously that's far from the case for the great majority of people, right? You look at going to rehab, and even if insurance covers it, you might have a high deductible plan and it's going to cost you $5,000 out of pocket or whatever. And that's, in addition to being out of work for weeks, that's a tough nut to crack. So the crux of the mission of Alcohol Isnt is to provide financial support for folks in that position. So I am working on partnering with addiction treatment providers, and that could be therapists, individual therapists, that could be residential treatment facilities, that could be organizations that do IOP type programs. But the idea would be if Jane Q Public is considering going to rehab and she gets in the admissions process with one of my partners, and they get to the point where they check insurance and they say, okay, Jane, your insurance is going to cover this, but we need, your deductible is $5,000 and we need that out of your pocket here up front. And she says, oh my God, I need help, but I can't do $5,000. That partner of mine can say, hey, we work with this organization called Alcohol Isnt. They provide financial help for people who need quality treatment. Let me connect you with them, and we might be able to cover, say, half of that. So she owes 5,000, we can come up with 2,500. She comes up with her 2,500, and that's super difficult. This financial decision to get quality treatment when you're really, really struggling is made easier, and hopefully we help change some lives that way. So alcoholisnt.org is the site, and Alcohol Isnt is on all the, well, not all. I'm not on TikTok, but Alcohol Isnt is on Twitter and on Instagram, and there's a Facebook page. So if anyone is interested in what that's all about, or interested in helping out with a donation, that's my primary gig right now. I do a little bit of consulting on the side to pay the rent as well, because right now Alcohol Isnt is brand new. I just started it a few months ago, so it doesn't pay me anything, but it's a passion, and it's my commitment to serve others and help. Hopefully help people avoid the kind of suffering that I've been through in my life.
Awesome. That's really awesome. I'm going to definitely pick your brain after this. Real quick,
Cool.
I have one more question, and then I want you to plug your book again. My last question that I ask everybody is, do you have any advice for people watching or listening?
Oh, we could go on for another hour with my advice, I think. I think my primary advice, the reason my current period of recovery has been so wonderful and so successful, people have asked me. I'm very open about what I've been through. Obviously, I wrote a book about it, so I'm pretty transparent. But a lot of people have asked me in recent months, like, why is it different now? Like, how do I know you're not going to slip right back to where you've slipped back to multiple times in your past? And when I really think about it, I think this time, I'm doing it the way I believe in. I think various phases of my recovery over the past several years, a lot of what I've done because I thought someone else expected me to do it. Like, I would go to meetings, whether they were AA meetings or refuge recovery meetings or recovery Dharma meetings. A lot of times I'd go just because I knew that someone was going to ask me, what have you been doing? And I wanted to be able to say, well, I went to AA the other day, or I went to Recovery Dharma the other day. And I go to Recovery Dharma now. There's a great group here in Boise, but I go because I legitimately love that group, and I love the message of Recovery Dharma, and it's really valuable for me to spend that time with those people. I'm not doing it to be able to tell you that I go to Recovery Dharma, or tell my daughter that I go to Recovery Dharma. I go because it's good for me. I would encourage everyone to also work with a therapist, even when you're feeling super healthy. That's another thing I chose to do sort of unconventionally. Like, I work with a therapist who has no addiction experience, because addiction, while it's been super problematic in my life, right? It's led to jail time, and it's led to hospital time, and it's led to divorce, and it's done all these super terrible and rough things. But like, that's never addiction. Often, I think almost always, is a symptom, right? There are other things that are problematic in your life. For me, it's often issues of self-worth and self-confidence, and beating myself up over how I should have done things better or should have done more. And in my past, like, drinking was my way to cope with that, right? Any uncomfortable feelings, okay, if I'm feeling uncomfortable, if I'm stressed out, if I'm mad, if I'm sad, I know I can get rid of that with alcohol, right? I can numb it away. So I think the key for me in mental health is working with those issues of self-esteem and self-worth, so that I never feel like I have to escape it, right? Finding other coping methods. Addiction is just a symptom, so I want to get rid of the root cause problem so that I never have the symptom again. So I encourage anyone to work with a therapist, and I'm not suggesting that everyone go find someone who's not addiction oriented. Certainly there are fantastic addiction oriented therapists who are totally great and appropriate for everyone, but find the right one. There are good ones and bad ones, and the one that's good for me might not be good for you. And it's super hard to find that great relationship, but put some work in to find that relationship would be my advice. And and do something of service. You know, obviously not everyone's going to write a book and not everyone's going to run a nonprofit, but I think committing yourself to some sort of service is important. You know, in AA, you know, they always say, well, just set up the chairs or make coffee, you know, even if it's just that, like giving back to the recovery community in whatever way you can, I think is important. And relationships are important. I had a therapist when I was living in Eugene who was fond of saying that connection is the opposite of addiction. And if I look back at the best periods of sobriety that I've had, one constant theme there is I had really good relationships going on in my life. Like I was well connected with my best friends. I had a recovery fellowship of some sort that I was well connected with. I had maybe a romantic relationship that was very positive in my life. Like being connected with other humans is super important. This sort of is almost an immunization against addiction, I think. So that's the advice that I would give.
Great advice. Really appreciate you coming on today. I think this has been a great interview.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jim. I really appreciate the time.
All right. Yes. So for everybody that's watching and listening, if you like what you heard and saw, go below and give us a like. Also subscribe to our channel. You can also find us on Twitter, Reddit, Instagram, Patreon, which is a free account there. You're going to have a lot of content uploaded. And I suggest going under the events tab, and you'll see that every night we do a nightly Zoom meeting, and you'll find all the sign-in information there. So that's all I have for today, and until next time.